All right, boys and girls, welcome to another virtual career day. These have been so exciting. I've learned so much about so many people. And today we have a new person with us, and I am so excited. I'm pretty sure that she's actually been to our school before. But welcome, Kelsey. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited to be visiting with you guys again, even if it's just virtually. But yeah, so excited to be here.
Well, we're so glad. We can't wait to hear all about what you do in your job. Um, Maybe not so much now that we're in this strange place in our life,
Yeah,
but before, when you got to go to work every day.
yeah,
Tell us
right.
all about your job. We're so excited.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, my name is Kelsey again. I am working from home right now, but I am an architect. So I do have a few slides to share with you, if that's okay. I can go ahead and do that. And we can talk through some of the stuff I do every day. And then at the end, I can answer some questions too. So I will go ahead and share my screen. All right, can you see that okay? Awesome. Let's bring this guy up. Okay, here we are, virtual career day at Fairmount Elementary. Again, I'm so excited to be sharing with you guys. I am an architect, so I'm just gonna go through a few of the questions that I usually get at career day. And then, like I said, at the end, we can answer some more questions if we have them. Before I get started, I do have to give a shout out to Mr. Anger, your principal. He was my 6th grade teacher back in 2003. So if you do the math, you can figure out how old I am and probably how old he is. But also it was a project we did in 6th grade that got me interested in being an architect. So really take those projects seriously at school. I know schooling at home is hard, but it could really have an impact on you someday. So just quick shout out to him. Okay, we'll get started. So the first question I usually get is, what is an architect? Very plain and simple, an architect is a designer, and usually an architect is a designer of buildings. We actually, as architects, we probably have designed almost every single building you've ever seen, if you can believe that. And that is everything from gas stations to skyscrapers, even to schools. And that picture on the right there is of Fairmount Elementary. Hopefully you recognize it. I know we haven't been there in a while. But schools is actually what I design as an architect. So I get to spend all day designing schools, thinking about how we can make classrooms better and more fun and more welcoming. So architects are responsible for the design of all kinds of different buildings. Another question I get is, what is the difference between an architect, an engineer, and a construction worker? So an architect, we're responsible for designing the building. We're also responsible for choosing the building materials that go on the outside and the inside. So you can think about things like brick, metal, paint, carpet, all those things. Architects are responsible for that. And then we also work with engineers and construction workers to complete a building project. It takes a big team to do all of that. Engineers, there are actually a lot of different types of engineers that work on buildings. There are structural engineers. They do a lot of math and they make sure that the building can stand up. There are electrical and mechanical engineers. They provide the light, the heat, and the air conditioning to the building. And then there are also civil engineers, and they are responsible for designing everything outside, like the roads, the sidewalks, the parking lots. That's what civil engineers do. There's also another type of engineer that is a train engineer, and that is something completely different. But we're just talking about engineers that work on buildings today. And then construction workers, these are the people who actually use heavy machinery and tools and materials to put the building together once it's designed. So that's kind of the difference between the three. So I'll walk through a few of the things that an architect actually does. How do we design a building? And the answer is, we do a lot of sketching, we do a lot of hand sketching, but the majority of the time is spent on the computer. We use 3D modeling programs, kind of like Minecraft, but like a lot more complicated, to design buildings completely in the computer before they're built in real life. And we use the computer to generate images. Like you can see that image on the bottom right, that's called a rendering. And that helps us see what the building will look like on the inside and the outside before it's actually built. And then we also use the computer to make what's called construction documents, or you might know of them as blueprints. These are the documents that we actually hand over to the construction workers at the end, and that's how they know how to build the building. That's how they know how tall each wall should be and where the restrooms go. You can see that picture in the lower left. That is an actual picture of my desk at work. Sorry again that we couldn't be there today and take a tour, but I do work with about 100 people in my office, and I work with structural engineers, graphic designers, interior architects. I work with all kinds of people there to build this model in the computer and to design a building before it's actually built. Another thing an architect does is we choose the materials, which is pretty cool. So if you're playing along at home, I want you to take a minute and look at this picture. This is a preschool in Joplin, Missouri. Look at the outside of this building and see if you can identify some of the building materials we used to put this building together. I'll give you just a minute. All right, here are just a few of the things we used. We used metal up on the roof and also in those columns you can see there. There's glass. This is the entry to the building, so we wanted a lot of sunlight to come into the entry. We used brick on the walls. Brick is a very durable material. We used that on a lot of school projects. And we also used concrete. We use concrete in the foundations, which are under the ground and help the building stand up, and then also in the sidewalk, like you can see in that picture. Okay, we're gonna do it one more time, but we're gonna do the inside of the building this time. This is the same preschool in Joplin, Missouri. Take a minute and see if you can identify some of the materials we used on the inside. All right. Here's just a few of the things we did. We used paint. This paint is kind of a lighter white color, so it's a little bit harder to see. We used wood to construct those tree structures. This is in the hallway of the preschool, so those tree structures kind of come up and over the top. We used some chalkboard on the wall as well that the students could come out and use during the day. And we also used some really awesome carpet that kind of looks like grass on the inside. And you can do this in whatever room you're sitting in too. You can look around your room, look at the ceiling, the walls, the floor, everything you see. An architect probably picked that out at some point, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool part of my job. All right, one of the last things that an architect does is we work with the engineers and the construction workers to complete the project. So how does the project go from living in the computer to being an actual building? And the answer is it takes a lot of teamwork. I work with a lot of people every day. Basically what they do is they use those blueprints and construction documents and renderings that we created at the beginning, and then they order all of those materials from different manufacturers and gather them at the site that the building will be built. You can see that picture number 2. That's kind of an in-progress picture of that preschool we were talking about. And then at the end, you have a finished building. So it takes all kinds of people to bring a building together, and you can kind of compare and contrast the rendering that we did in the computer at the beginning in step 1 and compare that to step 3 after the building is finished. So that's a pretty cool part of my job too. I love being able to bring an idea in our heads to life. It's a pretty cool thing. All right, so how do you become an architect? I've sold you on being an architect. It's awesome. Everyone should do it. How do you become an architect? Short answer, you gotta go to college. I got my master's degree from K-State, but there are a lot of ways you can get a degree in architecture. You do not have to get a master's degree. Lots of universities provide 4 or 5 year programs for architecture. But then one thing to note is after you graduate, if you want to become a licensed architect, like if you want to work for yourself someday, you do have to take tests after college and become licensed in the state that you work in. So I am a licensed architect in Missouri. So eventually if I wanted to work for myself and like design my own house, let's say, I could do that. So lots of schooling, lots of testing, lots of studying. All right, another question I get all the time, how much money does an architect make? You're not gonna like my answer, but it depends. It really, really depends. If you are designing gas stations, you may and may not make as much money as if you're designing high rises. But again, it really depends. It depends how many people are on your team, what part of the country you live in. It depends on the office you work at. So I can't give you a great answer because it really depends. How I like to answer that question is, more importantly, do something you love. Choose to work at a place where you get excited about what you design. So I chose to work at a place that designs schools because I love talking to students and teachers and principals and boards of education and community members about how our learning spaces can function better and be more exciting for you guys and be more welcoming. So that's how I love to answer that question. All right, that is all I have. So I will get out of this presentation and stop sharing my screen, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness, there's so much that you were able to share in that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I love how you answered that question too about how much money do you make, because you know, a job is not always about how much money you make. Yes, you need to be able to pay your bills and that kind of stuff. I definitely did not get into teaching for the money.
Right.
But
right.
I love my job, and
yeah.
I can see just from the way that you talk about your job, you love your job as well. So what's your favorite part of the job?
I think my favorite part of my job is the early stages of design. I get to come out to schools and actually talk to teachers and principals and students, and we get to really dream big about how crazy cool a school could be. There was a project I worked on in Tulsa, Oklahoma that actually has a slide inside the school. And that was something that we came up with in the beginning, and we carried it all the way through the end. So I really love those beginning stages where I get to work so closely with the students and teachers on kind of the big ideas of what the school could be. I think that's my favorite part.
That's amazing. I mean, I think we might all have a small connection because we just had Castle Park built recently, and it's a new school, and we were able to go through and tour it before they opened, and just to see the neat things that someone created in their head to be able, and came to life.
Right. That's a very cool part of architecture, that we get to take ideas in people's heads and make them a real thing.
Very good. So we are in elementary school, and what was your favorite subject in school?
So I loved art. I was a very big art class fan. I was also very good at math, and so I kind of thought those two things sort of added up to architecture. They do and they don't. But when I was in elementary school, definitely art was a big one. And then I liked math, and believe it or not, I liked public speaking. And I know that's not necessarily a subject, but it is something that you have to get better and better at to be an architect as well. You have to be able to communicate your ideas to other people.
Yeah, because you really want to share, like, this is my vision, this is what I want to think, and you have to convince somebody else to agree with your opinion.
Right, definitely.
Yeah. I can see that. I know in middle school, that's really where that's going to come in, is where they're going to get into some debate and public speaking, and more so than maybe in elementary school. I also, when I was writing notes, and one of the things I heard was you said that you had to take a test to be licensed in the state that you work. And I have a connection with that, because we don't really talk that much about it, but as teachers, we have to do the same thing. And if I move to another state, then I have to go to that state and take another test to be able to make sure that I'm qualified to teach in that space.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, we have, it's actually, I took 7 tests afterwards to get licensed. It was a lot. But the good thing about architecture is that once you are licensed, if you do decide to work in another state, you just pay a fee. You don't have to retake, unless you're in, like California has some extra special regulations about earthquakes and different things like that you need to know. But for the most part, you just pay a fee and you can work in whatever state you want to.
That your career sounds amazing. It sounds like something that somebody that loves arts and math, that all the angles that you use, and all of that shapes and textiles that you use, I think those are 2 perfect things. So when students, as you're out there and you find yourself loving this one subject of math and art, this might be the place for you to go to.
It's definitely something to keep in mind. Yeah, if you kind of like 3D spatial thinking, even some of the artsy, the interior, the carpet, the paint colors. That was the project we did in 6th grade. It was like an interior design project where we had to pick out different materials and design a room. And I was like, wow, I really love that. Yeah, definitely something to look out for.
And I'm so glad you brought that back, because what was it like to have Mr. Andrew as a teacher?
Oh my gosh. To be honest, I am a very like organized, rule follower type of person, and Mr. Andrew drove me crazy. I'm sorry for saying that. But he was the best possible 6th grade teacher for me, because he really helps me break out of that rule following type of box, and yeah, really grow as a person.
Yes, he's an amazing boss, but I just would never know him as a teacher. That's just not time that we've spent together. Has always been with him as a boss. So it had to be really cool to see. And I love that he would be somebody that would really grow and challenge you, because he really grows and challenges me on a daily.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Kelsey, for joining us on this virtual career day. I'm hoping that next year we'll be back in our building and everything will be well, and hopefully we'll be able to have you there live and in person.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope we're all back very soon, but I guess we have a summer to look forward to until then. So
there you go. All right, boys and girls, until next time, thanks so much for joining us and have a great day.
You are so welcome.